Rockshonara, so it's up to you if you want to.
Okay, yeah, I think we'll just get going. And if you guys could let other people in as they come in. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. So as I mentioned, I will be discussing the topic of self-compassion today. Before I carry on, I actually wanted to ask, what does self-compassion mean to you, sisters? About you, Dr. Amina, how would you describe self-compassion?
I think I read something today and it really resonated with me. And for me, self-compassion is the opposite of self-loathing. So if you're not self-loathing, then naturally you fall into self-compassion. So that's what I'm thinking today.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that, actually. So as you can see, in my article, I talked about how self-compassion is the opposite of self-judgment. So many of us talk about self-compassion. Sometimes we get it confused with self-pity. Sometimes we get caught up in thinking of, when we're struggling with our problems, instead of meeting ourselves with kindness, like you said, we meet ourselves with loathing. And what happens is, when we're struggling, the way we speak to ourselves, it is just really unkind. We're not really, when we're making a mistake, we sometimes allow ourselves to make one mistake, but sometimes we're human, we fall into the trappings of making mistakes time and time again, and we get really angry with ourselves. We end up berating ourselves. We get to a point where sometimes, it's not just making a mistake, we're putting a certain situation. Sometimes we lose, financial difficulties. We might have, grieving through something, a situation because of loss, and we feel like we can't cope. And when we go through that, that way, when we think like that, we sometimes lose motivation and the willpower to want to move on. And often we feel really isolated because we feel like we're the only one going through that problem. And then so we feel so alone in our struggles. And that's what self-judgment does. It's not self-compassion, where sometimes we think, okay, I'm struggling, so I'm going to take some time out. But we sit there and take time out, and all we do is berate ourselves. That's the opposite of self-compassion, just like what Dr. Amina said. And the other end of the spectrum is when we start feeling sorry for ourselves, and we start justifying our mistakes, and we lose accountability for what we've done. We're like, oh, I did that, but yeah, it's so-and-so's fault. If they hadn't behaved like that, for example, so those of us who are mothers, it's so easy when we shout at our children and we feel guilty, let's be honest. We shout at them or we tell them off, and then it's like, well, if they'd listened to me, I wouldn't have shouted. But we're not really being accountable for our behavior there. And sometimes, we're placed in hardship, and we just, instead of moving on, what we do is we use it as a permission to do nothing. It is not a free pass to do nothing. Life is full of tests and trials, and it's a given we're going to be tested. Allah promised us that. And in that situation, we need to find a way to move on. Because when we fall into self-pity, we lose sight of our purpose in life. When we're judging ourselves, we lose sight of our purpose in life. Why? Because we get stuck in our problem. We get so caught up in feeling sorry for ourselves, losing accountability, berating ourselves to the point that we just can't move on. And we really don't want to do anything about it. And it's like we're feeling totally out of control, and we just get stuck. But the whole point of us being in this world, our purpose in life, is to attain Jannah, right? This is a test. It's a journey. In a journey, you don't stand still. You might take a break for a little while. And you might, if you're grieving, or if you're going through a hard time, you might take a moment to just give yourself that breathing space to feel what you need to feel. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't expect us to just stand still and do nothing. And one of the problems is we put perfection on ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't hold us to a standard of perfection. So why do we do that to ourselves, sisters? Why do we feel like we can't carry on unless we're not perfect, and we're not good enough unless we've attained the standard of perfection, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself has not expected that from us? And it's become common ground now that there's this desire to attain perfection, but that's wanting to be like an angel. We're not angels, we're human. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us human, and He said He loves us over even angels. And so why are we wanting to be angels when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves us more? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave us permission to be human. Because in Surah Baqarah, He says He does not burden a soul beyond that it can bear. So this is so powerful because it enables you to meet yourself with kindness. He's giving us permission to be human. Yeah, we're going through a difficult time. I'm not saying don't accept that. I'm not saying don't, don't believe that. Don't just assume, oh, no, there's nothing wrong with what I'm going through. It is a difficult time. Accept it, sit with it, take a moment, accept the hardship, but realize you can handle it because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised you. He said that in the Quran. He's the all-knowing. And when you accept that truth, that burden falls away. It really does, sisters. If you reflect on it, you can face yourself and meet yourself in that difficult, even when you've made a mistake, even when you've done something wrong that you shouldn't have, when instead of falling into self-pity and justifying yourself or getting really cross with your child or doing something really wrong or just feeling like you can't cope, instead of feeling stuck in that moment, that ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you permission to be human, gives you the willpower and motivation to believe in yourself and move on. And what it does in that situation is holds you to account as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not giving you free pass to say, okay, I make a mistake, it's okay, I'm going to forgive you. But He's, when you sit there and you reflect, what do? You validate your feelings, but you can also look at it and give yourself a space to heal. And you can be mindful of what's happening around you, why you did what you did. Because self-compassion enables growth, sisters. Our trials and tribulations enables us to find our true potentials if we choose to look at it through the lens of self-compassion. And we need to channel our energy in that direction. We need to make that choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us that ability to choose which lens we see the world with. We can choose self-pity. Yeah, we can choose it. We can get stuck in that. We can choose self-judgment. Yeah, I've been there. I think we've all been there, sisters, at some point or another. Either or. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us this ayah, gives us permission to find ourselves, meet ourselves in the middle ground. Meet yourself with kindness. Don't beat yourself up to the point you can't move on. Don't suppress your feelings either, because it's going to come out in a way that's not going to be pleasing to Allah at some point. Let's be honest. When we suppress, it comes back later. But when we meet ourselves with kindness and we check ourselves and we are mindful of what we've done, like giving ourselves that space to heal gives us that time to meet ourselves without judgment, without berating ourselves, and without giving ourselves permission to do nothing. We can sit there and think, oh gosh, what did I do? Oh, I lost my temper with my son. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, but it's done. But what can I do? I reflected on it, made a mistake. I can repair. I can go to him and apologize. I can seek forgiveness from Allah for my mistake, because Allah is Al-Ghafur. He is perpetually forgiving, because we perpetually make mistakes. That's by nature who we are as human beings. And then once you've done that, you can move on, sisters. That's the beauty of Allah's mercy on us. And then what I find, subhanAllah, really amazing when I was reflecting on this is realizing that strength isn't perfection. It's allowing yourself to make a mistake, but choosing the lens of self-compassion to come back stronger. So what's happened now is you're now a person that's made a mistake, but because of the mistake, you have come back stronger. Isn't that amazing? But you couldn't have come to that conclusion had you not met yourself with kindness, had you not met yourself with some form of accountability, what Allah gave us in the Quran. And because at the end of the day, this ayah enables us to realign ourselves with our purpose. We're all of us, sisters. I genuinely believe that we are all women of Jannah. One day we're gonna leave this world. This world is temporary. We are all going to Jannah, inshallah. And it is attainable because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not expect us to be perfect. He's not put that on us. He's asked us to be striving, you know. And how do we do that? We make mistakes. We learn from it. We reform. As long as you're constantly trying to purify your heart, constantly trying to realign yourselves with Allah, and making dua, Allah will put people in your path that will signpost you back to Allah often. And being mindful, and I don't mean just reacting. And yeah, we fall into reacting sometimes, but being mindful, being consciously mindful, not just being aware of my problem and being caught up in that, but questioning ourselves, being actively engaged with what's going on in our mind. Kindness, being mindful, and realizing that being human, sisters, is something that making mistakes is something that's not, isolated. It's not something that just only happens to you. It's not just something that only happens to me. It happens to all of us. Every single one of us here listening in today, we've all made mistakes at some point or another. And that's okay. And I'm not giving you a free pass or giving myself a free pass that we can continue to make mistakes. But if we learn from it, we try to reform ourselves from it, we're striving, sisters, and we're earning our akhirat. Because ultimately, what happens is Allah gives us hardship to build us and raise our status in hereafter. And that's what I mean. I mean, like, we're women of Jannah. That's where we're going to go. And, Allah says, gosh, I am as you think of me. And I genuinely believe that we will all go to Jannah. So long as we meet ourselves with kindness and with compassion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give us our trials to break us. It might feel like it in that moment, definitely. Sometimes we have moments where we feel like, okay, this is too much. But when you can sit with that feeling, when you can validate that feeling and meet yourself with kindness, allow yourself to heal, subhanAllah, no matter what you go through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there. And when he's there, when you bring him into whatever problem you're at, suddenly it's not as heavy. Suddenly you can cope. Suddenly you're not at the bottom of the sea feeling lost and lonely and isolated. And here I just wanted to talk about our Prophet. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He had many trials. He was an orphan. He grew up as an orphan. He moved from home to home. His grandfather passed away. He lost his wife and uncle. He outlived his son. And he grieved too. He really grieved. Yet he was the most compassionate man. And that's not a coincidence, sisters. And he's our example. And I want you to think about that. I want you to really reflect on it. And what I've taken from my reflection is that going through hardships, it becomes a source of empowerment. So long as you have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala there through it. And as long as you remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not burden a soul with more than he can bear, you will always be able to help yourself. And so with Allah's mercy, we realize that we as humans, we're flawed, but we also have the capacity for immense strength and resilience. And that journey begins when we meet ourselves with self-compassion. So sisters, does any of this resonate with you? Have you dealt with situations where you've felt like you're struggling, where you've made mistakes? Shall we discuss this? Go into breakout rooms and discuss this now. Tamina?
Yeah, inshallah, let's go into breakout rooms, inshallah.
Awesome.
So everybody can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I've just got a new laptop and I'm still getting my bearings.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Okay, sisters, we had me and one of the sisters had a really great talk. She was talking about like how she's really struggling with a few things. Like she's struggling with her children, but she's also struggling with herself in how she's managing her children struggling. And we talked about the ayah and how empowering the ayah is, and it gives you a lot of relief. We don't realize how much we fall into wanting to be perfect, or thinking that we can guide our children, we can make them. We have absolutely no control over our children. Unless when we can't guide them, we can just, we're their shepherds, we can just signpost them, put a light in the direction that we think would be pleasing to Allah, you know. And I think I was in Dr. Amina's, me and Dr. Amina was speaking, listening to Sister Fatima, and she posed a really good question about how to support your child when they're actually berating themselves, when they've made a mistake and it's been years and they're still thinking about that mistake and saying like, oh, why did I make that mistake? And you're telling them, you know, it's okay, you're still young, Allah will forgive you, but they're not they're almost like not believing that. And it goes back to the fact that we can't control what our children think. We can only model, compassion. And so we talk to them, kindly but firmly. Say, yeah, Allah will forgive you. Say it firmly, I, as my mother's passed away, but I, as a daughter myself, even when I was an adult, when I was going through difficulties myself, and my mom would say, you can cope because Allah said so. And even when I would, still be caught up in my worries, just the fact that my mom said it with such conviction, it gave me some reassurance. And then she reassured me again every so often. And that's all you can do, but you meet them with the kindness that you meet yourself with. And that's why that's another thing me and some of the other sisters were talking about, is it's a cycle. If we can meet ourselves with compassion, we can meet our children with compassion. We can accept them for not being perfect. And when we do it with conviction, our children see that being modeled to them. And despite their inner dialogue, they will come, inshallah. And you make dua. Dua is so, as a parent, it is so powerful. I know I did a talk on it last time, but it's so powerful. You make dua, you ask Allah to support them, and you just model self-compassion, you model some kindness. So when you make a mistake, be vocal. I mean, I've recently started doing this with my children. It's like, oh, I made a mistake. Oh no. But Allah is forgiving. What can I do to not, what did I do wrong? how can I rectify that? What does Allah want? Just talk loudly, talk to them about it. I do with my older children. And so that when they make a mistake, they can have that inner dialogue. You're basically modeling it to them. And it doesn't always happen straight away. They don't get it, but you hang in there, you believe, because Allah is as you think of him, and you believe that, and then inshallah, they will start believing it too, because we are the shepherds. We can't make them think something. We can't make them forgive themselves. We have no control over that, but we have control over our actions. And as shepherds of our flocks, we can model. I mean, I don't know if you want to add anything to it, Dr. Amina.
No, I think that's really important, that to say, actually, you know what, I make mistakes too. Know that adults, for kids, adults are not the standard of perfection. That we make mistakes too. It's a journey. It's learning for everyone. And so that modeling is really good. But I also wanted, what came to me is, yes, we point them in the direction of Allah. Yes, Allah is all forgiving, but also we need to be fully aware of the tricks of shaitan. And we need to be talking about that too, because actually, when we are in that low state, and we will all get there, that's when you're most vulnerable. And that's when shaitan will remind you of those mistakes that you made. So not only do we turn to Allah, of course, but we also need to be aware of the tricks of shaitan. And so when we are aware of the tricks of shaitan, we can say, oh gosh, that must be his waswas. And, I'm not going to listen to that waswas, whether it's from me, whether it's from another person, whether it's from shaitan. And it's about making our children and ourselves, reminding ourselves as well, that actually when I am in a low mood, when I'm tired, when I'm sad, when I'm alone, that shaitan is our open enemy. He's going to come from behind you. He's going to come from in front of you. He's going to come from your left. He's going to come from your right. What does it mean when he comes from your left? All those mistakes you made, he's going to remind you. All those sins you committed, he's going to remind you. And he's going to use that against you. So, absolutely, Sister Fatima, what you're doing is absolutely right, pointing her back to Allah, but also being aware and, and sharing with her that, this is probably from the tricks of shaitan. He wants you to go down that rabbit hole further, right? So inshallah that helps as well. And I got another question come through, and maybe we could, that was similar, that, somebody said, when I do make a mistake, I really beat myself up about it. Day and night, I think to myself, will Allah forgive me? And I keep thinking I'm such a bad person. And this is what I was reflecting on yesterday as I was reflecting on the name Al-Mujib. We constantly are questioning, will Allah accept my dua? Will Allah accept my forgiveness? Will Allah, X, Y, and Z? But if Allah is confirming, He has told us He is the responder of duas. He is the acceptor of duas. Why are we questioning that? Do you see? I mean, I don't know about you, Rockshonara, but really, that reflection really made me think, like, why do I question so much the truth with my own
because we sort of we make our own, how do I put this, that attainment of perfection, we put that on ourselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not done that for us, and we get so caught up on that, focusing, what you focus on grows, and we put our light on that we lose sight of our connection to Allah. Because when we bring Allah to our problems, and I was talking to another sister in one of the breakup rooms, how when we know Allah, He's the perfect one, He's the most compassionate one, that perfection is for Him, not us. When we know Allah, we know ourselves, right? So when you realize we're not perfect, but it's Allah's, He's the perfect one, He's the most forgiving, He's the one who accepts our duas, Al-Majib, like you said. So we turn to duas, we turn to Allah, we bring Allah into our problem, and we find a way to move on. We don't get stuck. But it's when we're focusing so much on trying to attain perfection, again, that is like from shaitan as well. Like when we don't, we won't attain perfection, and so we fall short of our expectations, and then we feel bad about ourselves. And then, like Sister Fatima was saying about her daughter, and how what you're talking about, we just fall into like a point of what we feel is a point of no return.
Do you want to share that analogy, Rockshonara? Because that was quite a nice analogy.
Oh yeah, I was listening to a talk. Okay, I was listening to a talk recently, and what she I forget the sister's name, but what she said, like, I was like, wow, that's really good. Like she said, if you're driving on the motorway, for example, and your car breaks down and you need to change your wheel, or you need to get it seen to, you don't just sit there. You either have the tools yourself to change the wheel, or you either call AA or your brother or your sister or somebody who knows. You ask for help, and you put, you change the wheel, and it takes a moment to do that. So I think of the analogy, you're struggling, you find the coping mechanism within yourself if you got it. If not, you go, I don't know, we're talking to another sister, you come to coaches, you can be journaling, therapy, whatever it takes. You speak to someone, reach out. And then guess what, you get back in your car and you drive on. You don't unpack your bags and live on the side of the motorway.
Yeah, exactly.
And we often, sometimes we just sit there and say, oh, I feel so sorry for myself, I can't believe it. And we get stuck, or we berate ourselves to the point that we don't move on. We're just stuck there, and that's not where it is. That's why this ayah is so, so powerful, because it allows yourself to give yourself that space to heal, because you meet yourself with kindness.
That's it. And isn't that so beautiful? Like when our car breaks down, all we want to do is get back home.
Exactly. And our purpose, I really genuinely believe that we are all women of Jannah. We are all destined for Jannah, and Allah has made it easy for us by not expecting perfection. So long as we're striving, so long as we're, even when we make a mistake and we come back stronger, we've earned akhirah. So long as we've reformed, we're constantly purifying our heart. We don't get stuck in self-judgment. We don't get stuck in self-pity. As long as we're moving on where? We're moving on back to Allah. We're moving on towards Jannah, because we are all women of Jannah. I really, really genuinely believe that. And isn't that so empowering?
That's it. And also, what's the home of this dunya? The home of this dunya is going back to the all compassionate. One of the sisters said something really good. When you can't feel compassionate in yourself, go back to the most compassionate. He is Ar-Rahman. He is Ar-Rahim. It's like, when you run out of bread or milk, and you can't make milk, you're going to go to the store where they sell milk. So when you can't find that compassion in yourself, go back to the most compassionate. That's where you'll be at home. That's where you'll find everything that you need. So go back to the most compassionate.
Can I quickly add something to that?
Yes, of course.
We just had a really amazing discussion in our group as well, mashallah. And one of the things that the girls, they mentioned, and it resonated a lot, was that our upbringing has a big effect on the way we view Allah. So because we've been brought up in the older generation, now we understand about the mercy of Allah more. But because we've been brought up, like every time it's been like, fear Allah, to the extent that it's been so deep-rooted. Sometimes people went away from Allah, but this fear of Allah, this taqwa, it should have actually brought us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what it did sometimes was it built a wall between the people and Allah, and that connection sometimes got lost. And then we were trying to justify ourselves, trying to justify to the people, and trying to justify, trying to live up to the expectations of everyone, but not knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly is. He's the most merciful. Not knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more mercy than anger. And that fear that we should have of Allah is full of hope, full of love, full of, connection. But when that is lost, because of the fact that obviously you can't blame the older generation, they didn't have this knowledge, but we have now. And so using that, knowing that, we should take away that fear that's like a horrific fear, but it's a real real fear that brings us to Allah.
Yeah, because
And that's where we're going to find the compassion within ourselves.
yeah, and it's really interesting you talk about like how our older generation didn't know, and they did the best they could. But you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us all these tools, these opportunities. And again, it's something a sister said in one of the talks I was listening to, is she said, when a woman heals, she's healing generations to come. She's not just healing herself. And what you're saying about our older generation, they didn't know any better. But when we sit there and we try to inform ourselves, and when we try to meet Allah in our problems, find out who Allah is, He's the most compassionate. Instead of fearing Him, we love Him more. And when we can do that, we can pass on that love, that you know, that balance of, you know, the wing of fear and hope to our children. Because when we just focus on the fear, we lose hope. And then we pass that on. And when we can find that, we do the hard work. And sisters, when we're doing the hard work, even during these trials, we're attaining Jannah, because Allah loves those that work hard towards moving back to Him. So we're doing all the hard work. And guess what? We're not just attaining our Jannah. What we pass on, what we model, because we are meeting ourselves with the kindness and compassion, our children are going to pick it up, or we're going to pass it on. And then so we're going to break that, what Coach Tahmina was saying about that fear. I mean, I'm not saying no fear at all, because then you fall into self-pity, but we're trying to find that balance between fear and hope. And you can only find that when we focus on Allah's mercy, you know. And when we do that, we model it to our children and we pass it on. I think what you're saying is, yes, subhanAllah, it's amazing.
Yes, subhanAllah. And you know what it is? When we have this fear, we need to realize that sometimes fear is good, like to be aware that Allah will hold us accountable as well.
Mm-hmm.
So then there needs to be a balance, but at the same time knowing that when I repent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves me and will forgive me.
He's Al-Ghafur.
It's like being on that highway.
Yeah.
You know, I've made, you know, maybe I forgot to put that petrol in.
Yeah.
My fault. I forgot to put petrol in. I got stuck in the highway, didn't realize. Does that mean I don't put any more petrol in? Does that mean I don't call someone to go and get me petrol? You know, and then I realized next time I'm going to put that petrol in. Before I go on the motorway, before I make a journey, I'll check if there's enough petrol in my car.
You're a better person for that mistake.
Yeah. So that didn't make me something, you know, really bad, you know, or someone really like clumsy or silly.
You
but
still
really,
are a woman of Jannah. Just because you made a mistake,
exactly.
you learned from it, you still, you know, you can still attain Jannah despite that mistake. And you can apply that to any situation, mistake, trials, even when we got grieving. Sometimes we feel like we can't cope with our, like, our family members because they've gone, you know, like those feelings of not coping. But we can, because Allah, you know, has put people in our lives, has given us the tools. But we need to, and if we don't have the tools, sisters, that's what we coaches are for. If you're struggling and you're stuck in your problem for so long, please reach out to us. You know, and if you find that hard, journal. I mean, for me, journaling has helped a lot. A lot of people I know, it helps with that. But reach out to family, reach out to people who you know will be non-judgment, who will support you. But help. It's like I said, you know, being stuck there, and you don't know how, I mean, you don't know how to change a tire, but that doesn't mean you just stand there, you know, stay there forever. You can find somebody who can help you, and you might not always find them straight away, but you know, work at it. And even working at finding a solution and being solution based is what's going to attain Jannah for you.
And you have to make du'as for this. You really need to make du'as. You have to make du'as to find a solution.
Yeah.
And make du'as to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because du'as are real. Du'as come true. Du'as can move a mountain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't just stand there and look at a mountain, or we can't look at something and think it's impossible. Nothing's impossible with Allah. You know, it's impossible for us as human beings. Yeah, some things, but not with Allah. So that's where we need to take ourselves. That we can change, inshallah.
Yeah, I know we can talk about this. This is such a one of those topics that's like we can talk, but I'm mindful of the fact that it's been an hour and some sisters probably won't need to go back to family. So is there any sisters who want to say anything? if not, I might just end. Anybody?
Sisters have unmuted.
Anybody
Is
unmuted?
it Zabida and Swada? You unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I just want to add that, mashallah, I really found it useful. This is the first time I've joined, and I didn't realize that, how beneficial it was just to have sisters talking about things that I'm also going through at this time. So it's been really beneficial. Jazakallah khairan.
It's from Allah. I'm just glad. Alhamdulillah, it's been beneficial. Yeah.
Sisters, Assalamu alaikum again. It's the first time that I joined. I'm very happy about it because, I like to, hear about these things because in our everyday lives, we encounter all kinds of things. For me, what I do, the first thing when I have a problem is I go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I pray and I beg him to lead me out of that problem. Of course, you have to help yourself too and try to solve it your way too. But with his help and his covering, for me, I find that, 99% of the time, he's the one that pushes me in the right direction. I have a problem with my child or I have a problem with, family member or whatever, agonizing about it gets you sick and all of that. And I just try to leave everything in his hands. He's the first person that I go to. And I find that, most times it's solved. It will take long. We have to have sabr, we have to have patience, but it is solved in some way or the other. And whatever way it's solved, it's for the right way, because that is the way he wants it to be solved. Maybe it's not perfect the way we want it, but the way he does it, it's for the betterment of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Allah is al-Musta'an. Go to him first and foremost, and you'll find him. Subhanallah. That's so beautiful. Jazakallah khair for sharing. Rockshonara.
Okay, sisters, I think I'm going to call the meeting to an end now. It's been just over an hour. I'm sure we all of us want to go back to our families. Thank you for joining us, sisters.
And a reminder, Rockshonara, we're going to open up the WhatsApp group, aren't we? So please do share your thoughts, your insights, your ideas, any questions. Please do share on the WhatsApp group. I'm so happy to hear that there's been new sisters joining today for the first time, because subhanAllah, we've been here for a year. Last March we started these sessions. And so really, really happy that we're still reaching new sisters from all corners of the world now. Alhamdulillah. So great.
I'm just going to read the dua. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.